All right, good evening, families. Welcome to our Parent Academy Power Hour graduation pathways or high school graduation requirements. This one is targeted for 9th and 10th grade families. Welcome to everyone. My name is Sheila Kane, and I'm the District Coordinator for Family and Community Engagement. We're happy you've taken the time to join us tonight. We would ask that you just try to stay muted during the presentation. We would like to ask you to put questions into the chat whenever you think about them. Just put them in there and we'll deal with them along the way or in the Q&A session at the end. But not to worry, you know, if you put it in early on, I promise we will get back to you and take the questions, you know, in the order that they were put in, really. So tonight we're so grateful for our presenter, Dr. Rita Vasquez. She's the Executive Director of High School Education. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over right now because she's got a jam-packed session for you all.
Thank you, Mrs. Kane, and thank you everyone for joining us. Welcome. Thank you also to Dr. Brim and Mrs. Kane and their office for helping us put this parent webinar together. This is really important, and I'm glad we're all together tonight. There's a lot of information coming your way, and I don't want anybody to panic or feel like you have to write down a ton of things that we talk about. Mrs. Kane is going to send you this PowerPoint at the end of it, sometime tonight or tomorrow morning. It depends on how we get the email list, etc. And also some other handouts from the Department of Education that will also spell out many of the things we'll talk about tonight. So sit back and relax and just think about what's being shared with you and maybe think about some questions that you might have that are pertinent in general for the good of the whole. Nothing specific to your students, right? But just general questions about the topics we'll be discussing. And I think Mrs. Kane at the end will talk about how we're going to address some questions, okay? All right, so with that being said, let's go over the 3 topics that we're going to go over tonight, and they are big topics, okay? So first and foremost, we're going to go over the basic graduation requirements for the state of Florida. So the number of credits, either the 24 option or the 18 option, we'll talk about those in just a minute. What are the specific courses that are required for graduation? What's the GPA required for graduation? So really the basics required under state law. We're also going to talk a little bit about the state assessments. There's 2 of them that are specifically required for graduation. So what are they? And then the last thing I want to talk about is I think the piece I think we'll spend a little bit more time in, and that is the pathways to graduation. This is a really important conversation for 9th and 10th grade parents. And you may be thinking right now, does my child have a pathway to graduation? So all of our students do. But the conversation today will be about how purposeful is that pathway? Was that pathway chosen? And why is that important, right? There's multiple pathways. So why does my student as a 9th or 10th grader have to be super purposeful about that? What do they mean? So that's really the piece that I think is a piece that's because I think I was muted accidentally. I didn't do it. So let me just say last quick thing about the agenda. That bottom piece about our pathways is what I think makes Pinellas pretty unique among other districts, okay? So with that being said, let me click on the next slide. So there are 2 options available to our students under state law to graduate. Both of them finish in a standard high school diploma that is accepted by colleges, universities, technical schools, the military, art programs, you name it. But they are slightly different, and they serve. Sheila, I'm being muted somehow. And I don't want it to be something that continues because I think it'll probably drive all of us a little bit nutty.
I'm not sure how that's happening. I'll watch more on the right side.
All right, no problem, no problem. So please forgive us while we work through that little issue. Okay, all right, so there are 2 options, right? Both of them are accepted by the state, produce a standard high school diploma, okay? But what's different about the 2 options though is time. One of the 2 options lends itself a little bit better to finishing early. And so it tends to produce earlier grads, but both of them actually can be done in 4 years. So let's talk about them now. The traditional option requires 24 credits, and it's literally what the option calls itself. It's traditional. It's the students spend 4 years in high school. They do not graduate early. It's the traditional freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year pathway, right? The accelerated option can really be finished in 2 years. We actually have a student this year at least one that I'm aware of, who is in fact going to finish high school at the end of her second year of high school, which is pretty amazing. And she's doing the 18 credit option. And then that 18 credit option can also be finished in 3 years. And the state of Florida has so many options that it allows students to use the 18 credit option if they need 4 years to finish too. So lots of options available to students. And if you are a parent of a student who is in exceptional student education, they can use either of those two options on access points as well, okay? So let's dig in a little bit more about what's specifically required under either one of those options, okay? Overall, whether you're a 24 credit student or an 18 credit student, all of our students must maintain an overall cumulative GPA of at least a 2.0, which is the equivalent of a C grade in all of their classes. And so the word cumulative is important there because a student could get a D, for example, in a class or two, right? And still be okay to graduate at the end of 4 years because overall their GPA is at least 2.0. One of the things that I want to make sure that our parents know is that when our students, stumble a little bit and fall, and maybe they had a bad semester, or really something just wasn't right in a science class one year, et cetera, and it just wasn't clicking for them, we do have, and a student earns a D or an F, for example, in that class that they really struggled through that year or that semester, we have wonderful systems in all of our high schools for recovering credits that are not earned because the student earned an F grade, or for giving grades, Ds or Fs that a student earns. And the system in all of our schools is called APEX. So if your current freshman student or current sophomore student finds themselves in a situation where at the end of the semester, they earn an F in algebra or they earn an F in English too, right? And you're worried about, well, how is this going to be? How is my student going to catch up? Just call the school, talk to your school counselor, and ask them about getting in the school's credit recovery and grade forgiveness system called APEX, okay? It's available during the school day and it's available after school in the extended learning program for all of our high schools. It's also available for summertime. So we've just talked about one big requirement for graduation, everybody maintaining a cumulative GPA, grade point average of 2.0 or better, right? What's another state requirement for graduation besides the credits and the GPA, right? Well, it's specific courses. So let's talk about each of the specific courses that are required by subject area, okay? In English language arts, there are 4 credits required, and your students can earn that by taking literally English 1, 2, 3, and 4. And for students who are more advanced academically and want to challenge themselves, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with the pathways later, but for students who are really looking for challenges, they can also earn those 4 credits taking advanced placement classes. So advanced placement literature, advanced placement language, and 11th and 12th grade meet these requirements. If your student is in the International Baccalaureate program, the English classes they'll participate in those 4 years, right, will count towards the standard high school diploma. There's also, 3 of our high schools, have ACE classes. Those are also internationally recognized classes, and they have ACE general papers, for example. So if your student is in the ACE program and they're in 4 ACE classes or pre-ACE classes, those count towards the English language arts requirement. And lastly, our juniors and seniors take several dual enrollment English classes at St. Petersburg College that count. So however they do it, in whatever pathway they're choosing and whatever level of course they're choosing, they just must earn 4, okay? Then there's 4 credits in mathematics, which now specifically must include Algebra 1 and geometry. And by the way, some of you are sitting there saying, you know what? My student did some of those, a couple of those in middle school, and you are right. So students can take English 1 honors in middle school and bring that up to high school. Then all they have left to do in high school is complete 3 more English classes, right? Your students can take algebra and geometry in middle school. And then if they do that and bring that up to high school, which they would, then they just literally need to complete 2 more math classes in high school. Most students that do that, though, go on to very advanced classes in mathematics in high school and advanced English classes, though, okay? So what are other specific core classes required for graduation? So science is another area where the state specifies that our students must earn 3 credits. And the only science class that is specifically required by the state of Florida for graduation is biology. Then the 2 other classes that students must take in science are called equally rigorous classes. And that is all Pinellas County Schools offers in our high schools. There are some districts that offer science electives that are not equally rigorous. So students have to be really careful which ones they choose. We have eliminated that, and all of our science classes in high school meet the state's requirement for rigor, okay? And then lastly, in social studies, that interestingly to me, that is the area where it is most prescribed, really. For graduation purposes, all of our students must take 3 credits and pass 3 credits, and these are the credits specifically. World history is a 1-year, 1-credit class. US history is a 1-year, 1-credit class that students must take and pass. And economics and government are 2 semester classes. Each of them is worth a half a credit, but again, they're specifically required for graduation. So you could have 30 credits at the end of 4 years, but if you've not passed one of these courses that we just said are specifically required, you still would not be eligible to earn a high school diploma. You'd have to make that up in credit recovery, okay? So what are the other classes? Because even if you were keeping track and doing the math and adding those core classes that are required, you wouldn't have gotten to 24 or 18, right? So what are the other classes that our students must take to graduate? So one of them is called HOPE for short. It's the first one on the slide, and it stands for, it's the new physical education of the new generation. So it is physical education with a lot of health curriculum involved, and it's mostly the physical fitness principles, trying to ensure that our students lead a healthy lifestyle and develop healthy practices from high school through adulthood, right? Physical fitness. So it's the HOPE class that is required for graduation under the 24 credit option. Also under the 24 credit option, your students must earn a fine arts credit. So that is exactly what you think it is: art, painting, sculpting, or performing arts credit. So that's exactly what you think it is. Music, band, drama, for example, are all classes that fall, elective classes that fall under here. And then really wonderfully, the state of Florida opened up a pathway for this particular requirement for a lot of career technical classes. So culinary classes, auto mechanics, construction and drafting, and all of those classes now fit under this requirement for graduation, which is really exciting for students for their choices. Lastly, if you're still summing up the credits, you're going, well, there's about 8 missing, and you're right, okay? 8 then credits that are required for graduation are totally chosen by the student. They can choose any class at all, whether it's core or non-core. All of them would be called elective credits. We do have students, for example, the students that I told you about who take algebra and geometry in middle school, and then when they come up, they really only need 2 more math classes. Well, we have students who choose classes like pre-calculus or calculus, AP calculus, for example, to take as electives to meet this 8 elective credit requirement. They're just core classes because these students already finished their required core classes, right? So literally the other 8 classes that remain for the state of Florida for the requirements are chosen by the students in any area they'd like, okay? And then the other class that is other requirement that is a little bit difficult to explain, and I believe I have another slide coming up next that explains a little bit better, is that the state of Florida for the 24 credit option requires that our students finish a class online. And the online piece of this is really, really unique and very specified to be asynchronously online. That literally means that a student and the teacher, when they're online, through a laptop and through all kinds of wonderful educational platforms, they are not online together. So the student goes into the class, looks at the work that there is to do, maybe sees a video of the lesson for the day, and then starts the work for the class when the teacher is not signed in with them. The teacher grades things in the evening, sends notes to kids about how they're doing, but the work actually is happening self-paced on the part of the student, and the teacher and the student are not online together. Let me just peek at my next slide really quickly. Yes, very good. All right, just making sure it was what I remembered it to be. So our parents, several of our parents this year started off the year a little bit confused about why all of last year, if your students were my PCS online students, why didn't that count? Why on earth would that not count to meet the online course requirement? Well, the reason is the synchronous piece that I just talked to you about, okay? Our My PCS online classes last year were synchronous. The teachers were online with the student for most, if not all, of the class. And so the state of Florida, and not just for Pinellas County, for all the districts, did not qualify that as meeting the online requirement, okay? So even if your students were online, all of last year's ninth graders, right? And now you've got 10th grade students and you're like, check, they did that? They didn't. So we need to make sure, and you working with your student and your school counselor need to make sure that your students do in fact complete an online course, whether it's worth a full credit or a half credit, doesn't matter to the state. Just as long as they complete a complete course online asynchronously. And we have lots of options in our Pinellas virtual school, and your schools have lots of options for your students to choose which of their required classes will be online, okay? That's the one that's caused a little bit of confusion since we all essentially have the option to go virtual last year, but it's not the virtual that the state of Florida is qualifying to meet the requirement, okay? All right, we just finished explaining the 24 credit option. Let's talk a little bit now about the 18 credit option, and let's try to see if we can kind of tease out the differences. So the 18 credit option is called the accelerated option by the state of Florida, and it definitely in our district is leading to a lot of early graduates, right? Definitely a lot of students finish this by the end of their 11th grade year, their junior year, but we do have a few students who are in fact finishing this at the end of their sophomore year, especially those students, like I mentioned before, who took a lot of classes in middle school that they brought up with them to high school, right? So the 18 credit option has all of the core classes that the 24 credit option requires. So remember those 4 Englishes, still required in this option, right? Those 4 mathematics still required here, including algebra and geometry. 3 sciences with biology included, still required in this option. 3 social studies with US history, world history, economics, and government required, still in this. So all the core classes are the same. What the state of Florida did to reduce the requirements a little bit to really help the students work faster through it is that they removed 3 of the 8 electives. Now the kids just have to earn 5 elective classes. And they also said, students, if you want to accelerate and graduate early, you do not have to do the PE course. So you do not have to do the HOPE class, the health options through physical education class, nor do you have to do the online course, okay? So they literally just reduced some of the non-core classes. And if you're wondering why that's important, let's talk just a little bit about college admissions. A question we get a lot from parents is, well, do colleges and universities look at the 24 option and the 18 credit option as equivalent? And the answer is yes, they do. And the reason why that happens and why that's not something that's been a problem for any of our students that have graduated early is the core. Remember that, right? The state did not reduce English, math, science, or social studies. And what are the things that colleges and universities are looking for? They're looking for those core classes to be in place. They're looking that students challenge themselves and got the highest grade possible and challenge themselves with honors and advanced placement classes. So the 18 credit option and the 24 credit option are both valid standard high school diploma options. One of them is able to be completed a little bit sooner than the other one, but both are valid options for graduation, okay? So guess what? We have just finished the requirements that are not tests. So now let's take a look at, I have another slide in here that I might as well just give you a couple of minutes to read through some of those bullet points. And I kind of said it at the beginning that both options can be completed early, right? We have some students who accelerate through 24 credits, but definitely the 18 credit option can be done a little faster. And I mentioned how some students do start high school English and high school math in middle school, and some students don't. And guess what? They can just double up on them. They can take double the number of English classes one year or the first year or second year, or the third year even, so that they can complete those 18 credit requirements, okay? The trick is, what is the best path for your student and why? What's the why behind what it is they're choosing, how quickly they're choosing to accelerate through high school. So the last slide before we get into some conversations about options, okay, is all about assessments. So there are 2 state assessments that are required for graduation, okay? One of them is the 10th grade Florida Standards Assessment, or FSA for short, in English language arts and reading. So that's the literacy assessment. If you are a parent of a 9th grader right now, you're probably saying, well, my 9th grader takes this, will take one of these at the end of the year, and you are correct. In fact, your 9th grader will have been taking that since 3rd grade, right? But the state of Florida only looks at the score at the 10th grade level to determine whether or not your student has passed and is eligible to graduate, okay? So there's, and in reality, what they're saying is that the literacy skills that a 10th grader possesses at the end of the year are sufficient to graduate from high school and move forward into college, university, technical school, military, job, directly into a job, and be successful, right? So it is the 10th grade assessment that actually measures whether a student can move forward or not to graduate. And then the other one is the Algebra 1 end of course assessment, also known as the EOC for short, which can be given in 9th grade or 10th grade in high school. But some of you had students probably who took that in middle school in 8th grade. Some of you in gifted classes, for example, if you had gifted students in gifted programs or were in gifted classes, your students may have taken the algebra end of course assessment in 7th grade. So regardless of whether they took it in 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th, right, they need to pass that exam and have that recorded in their transcript, and then that makes them eligible to graduate. Both of those assessments, okay, are graduation requirements. You're probably wondering, well, I've heard that the biology class has an end of course assessment. You are correct, but it's not a pass-fail required for graduation. And you probably also heard, I know that US history has an end of course assessment, and you are correct. And so does geometry, but neither of those are specifically required as passing for graduation. And several of you may have also heard now that there is a brand new, it's going to be given this year to 11th graders. So your children are not going to be taking this test, this new test, but it's the civics literacy test, okay? And that one is also not going to be required for graduation. So these literally are the only 2 assessments that your children need to pass by the end of their senior year to graduate with a standard diploma. And then the last little bullet I put on there is just to let you know that should at the end of the 10th grade year, by the end of the 10th grade year, your students not have passed one or more of those assessments, these 2, they will become retakers, and they will have the opportunity to keep retaking those tests on through their 12th grade year so that they can graduate successfully at the end of 4 years, okay? All right, now this is the part, and Sheila, I don't know, I don't see any questions, so we're okay to move forward? Okay, very good. All right, this is the part that I'm also really excited about, and I am in a little bit. I think I'm going to try to go to the website, Sheila, following the link that I created, and that may be a good time to see while I'm getting that going if parents have questions. All right, this is the part that I'm really excited about because it's the part that I think that parents and students in the school really need to work closely together to choose the best pathway. And that's why I love talking to 9th and 10th grade parents, because your kids are just at the beginning of the high school career, right? Even a 10th grader still has time to make some adjustments to their course, some adjustments to the pathway to really make sure that they're accomplishing their goal for after high school. We in Pinellas County really believe that it's not just about getting to graduation, right? The whole purpose of high school is to prepare students for the next step of their life, which we literally list in our mission as being preparing them for college, career, and life. And so the pathways, I think, the Pinellas Pathways to Graduation are the vehicle with which parents and students and counselors can have a wonderful conversation about which pathway is the best for your students. How purposeful can we be and intentional can we be in taking a look at the classes that are offered in 9th grade and in 10th grade and in 11th grade and 12th grade, and the goals my student has for the future, right? And then selecting intentionally which classes they're going to take, which classes will put my child on the pathway to what it is they want to do after high school. So the pathways are literally exactly what my slide says. They're guides for the selection of courses very purposefully, okay, so that your child has the ability to move right into the option they want to move into right after high school. There is, I mean, I can't almost think of something sadder other than a health issue or a concern like that, but of a student getting through high school and going, oh, I didn't quite set myself up for what I wanted to do next, right? It's unspeakable to us to think about that. So what we know from speaking to college admissions officers, right, across the state in two-year colleges and four-year universities, competitive and not in community organizations, right, is that the courses the students select while they're in high school is the most important factor in college admissions decisions. Of course, they look at SAT scores and ACT scores, but they really want to see what did the student choose in high school to engage in that makes them a good candidate, a good fit for our college program, right? So these pathways, that's the entire intent for these pathways. They help students and parents select the courses that are best aligned with your post-high school plans. So let's start taking a look at them, okay? Or at least getting to know their names, and then we're going to take a look at them a little bit more closely. So we have 3 pathways in Pinellas County schools. We have 3 of them. We've aligned 2 of them with what the state has created. I want to say maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, the state created what they call diploma designations. So we've taken our 3 pathways and we've aligned 2 of them to the state's diploma designations. That means then that if your students follow our college pathway, they will qualify for the state's scholar diploma designation. And I'll talk about that more in just a little bit. If your students follow our technical/college pathway, then your students will meet the state's merit diploma designation, okay? And then you can also see that there's a 3rd pathway there, the advanced scholar pathway, which we partnered with the College Board to create and which is exclusive to Pinellas County schools. So you're probably wondering, well, what does my student get if they meet the requirements of the diploma designation, right? Whether it's Pinellas's or the state's diploma designations. And honestly, I'll tell you what it is right now. It is prestigious. It is an additional seal that is put on your student's diploma, along with a seal like being a part of a National Honor Society, okay, or being a part of Mu Alpha Theta, the Mathematics Honor Society. It is a seal that gets put on your student's diploma officially, and it's also a designation that gets recorded, on your student's transcript. Now, could I tell you that a student gets accepted or not to a specific university over another student if they don't have that diploma designation? We would not be able to tell you that. But what would be the harm, right? You would want your students, if they qualify, to earn that designation. We're going to talk a little bit more about diploma designations at the end of this PowerPoint. And then when you get this actual presentation, these are live links that you can click on. It'll take you right to our webpage, so you can read a little bit more about that yourself when you have a little bit more time, okay? So now let's dig a little bit more into our actual Pinellas pathways. And again, it is hugely important that you are 9th and 10th grade parents, because it is not too late to sit down with your student, place a phone call or an email to your student's school counselor, and talk about the right pathway for your student. It is not too late. If I were talking to 11th and 12th grade parents right now, which I did a couple of weeks ago, I didn't bring up the pathways, because at that point, they're far enough down that road that it is a little harder to say, okay, I'm going to really accomplish this specific pathway, right? But you've got 9th and 10th graders. This is perfect timing for you. So the Pinellas Advanced Scholar Pathway, which remember is exclusive to Pinellas County schools, okay, really is for students whose goal after high school is a very, very, very competitive four-year university. Their goal is to enter a university that we know has thousands of applications and admits a fraction of those applications. 2 easy ones to refer to right now are University of Florida and Florida State University. Those are extremely competitive universities in the state of Florida. They admit a fraction of the applicants, especially as freshmen, right, than most other state universities. And I think all of us have some competitive national universities on our minds. I won't start to name them because I don't want to insult anybody and leave out your alma mater, right? But we all have some competitive national universities that that may be the goal, your goal and your student's goal. So if that is what is in your mind for your work after high school, then you want to be looking at the advanced scholar pathway. Okay. I do want to let you know that if your student is in the IB program or the ACE program, just the nature of those two advanced academic programs are your students will automatically qualify without a whole lot of other intentional choosing. Your intentional choosing happened when you chose those programs, right? So those programs automatically qualify for the advanced scholar designation. But if you're a parent in this group right now, in this audience right now, whose students are not in the IB program or not in the ACE program, and that would be the majority of our parents across this district, right? We have IB in 3 schools and ACE in 3 schools. So the majority of our parents, I want you to know that every single one of our high schools in any program you choose, whether it's a career technical program or, for example, SEL at Largo High, et cetera, probably SEL at Seminole High, Rita, don't get your programs correctly, SEL at Seminole High, your student will be fine and can qualify for this. And just one quick note, one of my students, my own children who's long graduated from Pinellas County Schools, went to Seminole High School, not an IB program, not an ACE program, and then went right into MIT in Massachusetts right after high school. So all of our programs, all of our high schools, your students can access the courses and the pathway that's needed to get into very, very, very competitive schools, okay? So advanced scholar pathway. You're probably imagining right now what kinds of classes are in that pathway. And shortly, if I can make the link work on my PowerPoint, we're going to take a look at that. All right. So let's talk about the college pathway. This is what matches the state's scholar diploma designation. Okay. All of our programs are rigorous. So do not get me wrong, right? They're all rigorous. It's the specific course selection that makes it really unique to preparing students for a specific post-secondary outcome, okay? So the college pathway is also rigorous. There's rigorous courses that are recommended and students are guided to, and rigorous elective courses that best prepare students for entry into a 2-year college or a 4-year university, both in and out of state. So the college pathway will absolutely prepare your students, taking the right classes to enter colleges, universities, and technical schools, for that matter, by the way, okay, immediately out of high school. You'll notice when we take a look at the pathways in just a little bit that there's less of an emphasis on all honors or all advanced placement, et cetera, than there was in the advanced scholar, right? But those programs are not cut out or intended, or students do not all have to be in those classes, right? It's a matter of selecting, knowing what the goal is for after high school and selecting the right program that is the best fit for your student. So this is our college pathway. And then last is another pathway that we are beyond excited about. And I'll tell you a little story about this in a second about a student who left high school earning 3 times what I earn right now after 28 years in education, because he purposely chose and engaged in the technical college or merit pathway. Okay. So this pathway is really, really strong, a strong and good selection for students who want to challenge themselves academically rigorously too, right? But also really have a very specific career in mind and want to make sure that they take every opportunity in high school to engage in that career, engage in the training for that, so that they can either go on to a technical school or a college and continue that course of study, or go right to work after high school, right? Because they're leaving with a nationally recognized industry certification, okay? Those students are going to go right into whatever career or whatever program is going to prepare them best for that career. So if any of you are in, and I'm going to say this incorrectly, or maybe not as well as I could, in the IT world, right? And you know about a program called Oracle, which I'm so out of my league that I'm going to stop there because I know nothing about Oracle. But I do know this: about 5 years ago, we had a student who could have chosen any pathway that the student wanted to choose, but he chose the technical college pathway purposefully. And literally, he took every class that he could in the IT world from our career technical offerings. Right? He chose his pathway, he followed it, and took every class that we recommended him to take. Then he ended up getting a certification in Oracle. Okay. So that student left high school left high school and began earning as a high school graduate 6 figures. So it isn't about right. It isn't about whether you know you're headed right to college or whether you know you're headed to technical school. It's about what is your dream and how can we guide you to be best positioned to accomplish that dream by giving you an idea of the kinds of classes that best set you up to accomplish those dreams. Okay. And that is a true story. Student right out of high school followed this pathway and is making 6 figures right out of high school, right? Amazing. Okay. With that being said, something really important, because I don't want to make anybody nervous about pathways and what if I choose the wrong one, etc. It's important to have this conversation. It's important to really take a look at them and have a 4-year plan, right? You've got freshmen right now. If you're a freshman parent, take a look at what they chose to take a look at the pathways, and then take a look at what are they choosing in 10th grade? What are they going to choose in 11th grade, etc.? What are they going to choose in 12th grade? But here's the really also important thing to know. Can they switch pathways once they choose one? Absolutely. There is great flexibility. So maybe you start off as a scholar in the college scholar pathway, right? And your student says, you know what? I took 2 AP classes in 9th grade. Maybe they took AP Human Geography and AP Psychology or AP World History, right? And they said, you know, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that level of challenge. I enjoyed this, that, or the other. So Dad, I want to switch to the AP Scholar, the Advanced Scholar pathway in my sophomore year. You can do that, okay? Or maybe it's the other way around. I thought I was going to look at the College Scholar pathway, but really I got interested in this career technical pathway, and this is the one I want to follow. You can do that as well, okay? Students can start in one and they can end in a different pathway all the way through 12th grade. Obviously, the firmer we can tighten that up, the sooner, right? Then the more they can complete the courses that are recommended in those pathways. So this is where I think my link's going to work. So what I wanted to show you, I wanted to take you for a second, and my worry, Sheila, is that I might get lost in this. So if I do get lost in this and don't get to that site, if you don't mind maybe taking some questions, because I think that there's some in there, then that'll be a good thing while I'm getting lost. So I have a live, a live link in this PowerPoint that'll, when you click on this link, this is where it should take all of us. Okay, so let's see if you guys follow me there. Because when you land on this page and you scroll down, you can begin to read the pathways. So let's see what happens. And my other worry is coming back well. I'm not sure how I get back to the PowerPoint, but I'm going to give it a shot. All right. Oops. Sheila, can you tell me, do you see the web page?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, it worked. All right. All right, so very good. So I'm on our Pinellas County Schools webpage, right? And I actually use that link. So I'm actually clicking on the right site. So you can do as well following that link. And then you can see at the beginning here, we've listed again the requirements for graduation, okay? Then we describe the pathway and then take a look. We give you some recommendations for what 9th grade looks like and what 10th grade looks like under that pathway and what 11th grade looks like. And I know I'm scrolling quickly, what 12th grade looks like, okay? Take a look at the college pathway. We describe it, and then we give you the guidance as to what does 9th grade look like, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, okay? And then last but not least, the technical college pathway. So we gave you an idea again, and there's even options within that, right? 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade, okay? So if you have not had the discussion about pathways with your student, and if you do not know if they've specifically chosen one, this would be a great place to go, have this conversation, and then talk to your school counselor and make sure that your student's choice for pathway is selected. Are there some questions, Sheila, that we can take?
Yes.
Okay.
The first one was, how does back to the 18 and 24, credit options, how does the 2-year graduation program work if your child is in a program at a technical school?
At the RJ Tech. Okay, very good. So there is no, let me just make sure we're clear, because I may have been unclear. There's no 2-year program, right? There's an accelerated program, the 18 credits, which some students do manage in 2 years. Some students manage in 3. For if you're a parent of a student at Richard O. Jacobson Technical High School right now, what I'm hoping you gathered from that conversation that you had with the school counselor and with the principal perhaps, is that you are pretty much on a 4-year program there. Having chosen that school means you've chosen a 4-year or 24 credit option, okay? And the reason for that is the very deliberate and intentional career technical pathways that they have within that school. That's a unique, it's the only one of its kind. I know you know that very, very well because you chose it. And it's the only one in Pinellas County that really spells out when the students walk in, which career technical pathway they're moving through, whether it's veterinary or the nursing, or I'm not going to get them all right because I don't remember them all at RJ Tech. But almost I can say to you that it would be really difficult for an RJ Tech student to graduate in less than 4 years. You might swing it in 3, but the CTE classes that you know are blocked, that they have to have a certain number of hours in, CTE is career technical, right? They would probably not be conducive to doing this in 2 or 3 years. Any other questions, Sheila?
Yes, try to get through this one. Algebra 1 and the geometry EOC was not accounted for the last 2 years. I don't know if that's right. Okay. So
Yeah.
what do the kids have to pass for math?
Yeah, really good question. Okay, so let's clarify that the only year that we did not have Algebra 1, right, the EOC was the 1920 school year, so 2019, 2020. That was the only year. So the seniors who graduated that year were given a waiver, pardon me. And they were told, if you don't have the algebra yet, because we're not offering it one more time for you at the end of this year, you can waive it, okay? That will not happen again. So the state of Florida did offer that assessment last year, the Algebra 1 EOC last year, okay? If you were a student who hasn't passed it yet, you can now take that assessment again and pass it anytime between now and before you graduate, or the geometry end of course assessment counts too. So it's really important for all of you to know that all of your students, because your 9th and 10th grade parents, will be held to having a passing score on the algebra end of course assessment, which can also be met by having a passing score on the geometry assessment. There are two other tests that I don't get into in this PowerPoint because this is a freshman and sophomore parent night, but your student can also pass the SAT, college entrance exam, or the ACT, college entrance exam, with a qualifying score and be okay for algebra. But that's more info than this group needs to know right now. However, I do want to just reiterate, all of your students will be held to the requirement to pass the Algebra EOC one way or the other by the state of Florida. The good news is your schools and your principals and all of their classes are aimed and set and prepared to prepare the kids to pass one of these things to graduate. Is there another one that's general and applicable right now, Sheila?
How do you enroll into the 18 credit option?
Good question. You ready? You don't have to enroll. It's literally, that's the beauty of this. The state of Florida, and they did this on purpose, and they did this in a very smart way. They wanted to make sure nobody was excluded and that there was no process or barrier that a parent had to go through. What a good idea to do though is have your student or you contact your school's guide, your school's counselor, your student's school counselor, and say to them, my child is interested in the 18 credit option. Please help them create a 3-year plan, right? Or you decide an X number of year plan so that they can make that 18 credit option. But there is no form for you to sign. There's nothing you have to submit. You just have to make sure that your school counselor knows your child is working to that and that you set up the 3-year plan to get them there.
Take another general one here. I didn't catch if a foreign language was required, and if so, how many years?
Very good. Okay, so there it is on the slide. And let me go back a second. I did sneak it in there. I just didn't speak to it. So let me go back to that one really quickly because it's worth looking at. Okay, here you go. So world languages are not required for graduation, not at all. So your student doesn't have to take Spanish or French or any other world language they might be interested in. In Pinellas County, we offer Spanish and French and Mandarin Chinese. Let me not leave that one out, okay? But, so not required. But do they count as electives? Yes, they do, right? And I do want you to know, and that is important, okay, that if your child does want to do the advanced scholar pathway or the scholar pathway, they're going to go to college, major university after, the state university system does in fact require that 2 of the electives be 2 years of a world language, okay? So thank you for not letting me sneak by without speaking to that one. It's not a graduation requirement, but if your child is headed in that direction, that is important, okay? Any other one while I flip back, Sheila, to where we were?
Sure. This one, I think you kind of just addressed, but I'm not clear either. So I'm going to ask. We were told the geometry EOC would qualify as a graduation credit because the Algebra 1 EOC wasn't given due to COVID to eighth graders in 2019. Is
Yes.
that correct information?
Yes, it is. You are correct. So the state of Florida is accepting now to meet the algebra requirement, okay, for graduation, the Algebra EOC, it's accepting that. The geometry EOC, it's accepting that if your student passes that, and or right, the SAT and the ACT. So yes, the answer is yes. Geometry, a passing score on the geometry EOC now qualifies or replaces. You can think about it as replacing the Algebra EOC because of what happened in 1920. Was that clear? I hope. Okay.
Me? Yeah, we'll find out. But
Okay.
anybody, still has questions, just keep putting them in the chat. We're getting to them here.
All right.
If a student did Spanish 1 in middle school, do I have to do Spanish 2 in high school? Maybe we have a student listening here, and I think you answered that. But
yes, you
yeah.
should. You should. And you know what? If you're a student, make sure the state university system, colleges and universities like for those to be consecutive years. Okay. So if you took it in eighth grade, you want to be in Spanish 1 in ninth grade. If you take Spanish 1 in ninth grade, you want to be in Spanish 2 in 10th grade. The university system, the college admissions officers like for that to be consecutive years. Okay.
Just
all right.
On that, does taking Spanish 1 asynchronous in middle school count toward the online course requirement?
Oh yeah, if you took Spanish 1 in Pinellas Virtual School or Florida Virtual School, which are both the ways you can do asynchronous, that does meet the high school online requirement. Yes.
All right. You can go back to your slides and we'll catch the rest at the end.
Sounds good. And you can see my slide again, correct?
I can.
Perfect. All right. That was easier to navigate that than I thought. Okay. So my slide, this slide is really simple and I kind of already said it. If you are unsure, right, if your student has chosen a graduation pathway and really has those 4 years or the next 3 years laid out for them, just contact your school's counselor, your student's school counselor, right, your school's assistant principal for curriculum. That, if you don't know who that is, you can find that on the school's website. Every school's website has the administrative team, and look for that assistant principal for curriculum. The curriculum assistant principal actually supervises school counselors, and it is their job to make sure your children are scheduled and meeting the state's graduation requirements. So you have 2 good sources at high schools, okay, at your high school specifically, to ask for help with this. At the end of this PowerPoint, I'm also going to give you the district leader, the district school counselor supervisor, who can also be a help to parents if they're not getting help at a school. And I don't know any school that doesn't want to help parents. So that's really your first line, to talk to them. But should you have a problem and you don't have an answer or question answered, we can help. We have other people who can help you as well. Okay. All right. I mentioned, and I'm going to mention this really briefly, okay, because it's a lot of detail to take in one night. And Sheila's about to about to send you documents that spell this out a little bit better. Remember on the slide when I talked about the diploma designations? And I talked a lot about how our pathways, the advanced scholar, the scholar, and the college scholar, and the technical college merit, they all allow, if you follow those pathways, you're going to qualify for these diploma designations, right? So I want you to feel comfortable about that. If you're following our pathways, your children will qualify for this. But I also wanted to let you know that these seals, which are I think that they're very, I think it's exciting when students want to achieve a seal, one of these seals, right? And one of these designations for their diploma. Like I said, it's a really nice, very attractive seal for their diploma itself, right? For when you frame that. It's also recorded on their transcript, okay? If you want a little bit more information about what the diploma designations entail, I've given you a link here. This is another live link. I'm not going to go to it this time, okay? Because I want to answer more questions if you have them. But this is a live link in this PowerPoint. You'll see, oops, okay, Rita, don't scroll. All right, you'll see that when you get there, when you get to that web page, this is what you will see. And when you scroll down on the actual live web page, it'll just explain these designations. So what's different between, or what's additional to what I've already told you, those courses that are required in the pathway, and if you follow them, you're going to qualify. There's also testing requirements. So for example, I mentioned earlier that for graduation, your kids don't have to pass the US History EOC, end of course assessment, or the biology EOC. They don't have to pass those for graduation. But guess what they have to pass those for? Advanced Scholar designation or Scholar designation. If you and your children want to get those seals, right, on your diplomas and on your transcripts, then you do have to pass those two state assessments to get the diploma designation. So it's just a lot of information, a little bit more that's outside the realm of basic graduation requirements. So I didn't want to also put it in here because already you can see that we packed this tight with information. So again, if you're a parent and you're listening, you're going, well, I want my child to choose a pathway, but I also want to know what else I have to do to qualify for one of those seals, then just click on this, read down through the website, and you will know all of the specific things, the assessments that have to be passed by students to earn those seals. The other thing I mentioned earlier is that Ms. Kane is going to send you some Department of Education, Florida Department of Education PDFs that you can take a look at, which spell out the graduation requirements and the seals very, very clearly for parents. Okay, they actually make really good parent-friendly documents, the state of Florida does. And so the last thing, and I mentioned this a second ago, so this is a lot of information, right? But it's so important that if you do leave tonight with questions, we hope that you go back and look at this PowerPoint again, and that helps you, or look at the recording again, look at the documents that Ms. Kane will send you that are PDFs that you'll get. But also please know that there are people, this is our job. This is the work we do, right? Your school counselor, this is what they do. Write them an email, give them a phone call, and ask them about graduation questions or the pathway questions. Your schools, I already mentioned, your school's assistant principal for curriculum is responsible for the graduation of all students. They're a really good source to help you with graduation questions. Your school principal, right? They still love to get involved in this. They'd rather get involved in this than get involved disciplining kids. They'd rather have a conversation with you about what your child wants to do after high school and how to get there than disciplining a child, right? Trust me, they will enjoy speaking with you. Then there are two more people at the district office who can help you work out problems. If you encounter problems in schools or you're not sure you're getting the right answer, Valerie Santos is the district school counselor supervisor, and this is her email address. And then of course I'm Rita Vasquez, and that's my email address, and you can write to me as well, okay? All right, Sheila, do you want to take more questions? We've got a few minutes.
Yes. Where's the AVID course considered in all this?
Good question. Wow, I love these questions. Okay, so AVID is an elective. So remember when we talked about the 8 elective credits required for the 24 credit option, or the 5? I can't do 8 and 5 with my fingers at the same time. The 8 or the 5, right? So it is an elective class. So AVID 1, 2, 3, 4 would count as 4 electives towards graduation.
The next one is a little about applying for college, but let's ask it. If we do online school, nothing to do with COVID, and can't really get into clubs or do high school sports and stuff like that, then does that reduce our chances for college since we can't really get a good resume filled out?
So I would never say to you that it reduces things, right? Because I just wouldn't say that. I think that colleges and universities give a fair look at everybody whose application they get, okay? And I am definitely not the most qualified person to ask. Your school counselor will be a good person to ask. I do know this though, that can help a little bit. And then my recommendation, Sheila, to this parent's going to be call your school counselor and ask them that question, right? Specifically. Do you know what else, before I tell you another just a parent to parent thing here? What else is, call the college and university that your child wants to attend. Call the admissions office of the college or university your child wants to attend and ask them to speak to an admissions officer. They will speak to you. But let me give you the other parent to parent advice, only because I had 2 children. My daughter went to MIT. My son is a Florida State grad. Don't hold either one of those against me if you're a UF or other grad, okay? All right. So what colleges and universities do is look at the school that the child was in, that the student was in for high school, and what were the offerings of that school? Or in your case, if you're an FLVS parent, for example, you look at the program your child is in and look at the offerings for that program. So for example, if we're in a small rural district in the state of Florida, and maybe in that small, very rural district, they can't offer a lot of advanced placement classes, but they offer a few. And the few that they offer, that student took, the University of Florida is not going to hold against them that in a Pinellas County high school, you can take 26 advanced placement classes, 26 different ones, right? They're not going to hold that against the child. Now, if you're a child from a school that has 26 advanced placement classes and you took one, probably not going to be looked at the same way at the University of Florida, et cetera, right? They're going to look at the context. So again, this is my personal parent-to-parent advice because of going through this with my own children. They will look at the child's context of where they were attending high school, right? And they will factor that into their equation of determining who gets in. But my best advice to you is call the school your child wants to get into.
Good answer. Next one was, how can we apply for the college pathway? And I think we've answered that there is no application.
Just tell them you want it. Tell the school you want that for your child.
What arts program classes are there on FLVS Global?
I am not from FLVS. I'm so sorry, I cannot assist, but I do know they have a great website. I would go on to their website.
The next one was also a FLVS. How many FLVS courses will a tech high student need to do to complete the pathways?
They don't need to.
Yeah. How do I get my students signed up for them?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there is no FLVS required class. There's an online required class, and your student can take that through Pinellas Virtual School. Okay. So a student in any school, if you're going to meet the 24 credit requirement, whether it's RJ Tech or Seminole or Eastlake, if you're going to meet the 24 credit requirement, your student has to complete one online course, and they can do that through Pinellas Virtual School or through Florida Virtual School.
Here's a very specific one. I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer this. I don't know. Will CPT and net security course number, blah, 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 fulfill the fine performing practical art requirement?
So I tell you what, if that parent emails me that at this address, the Vasquez R down here, because I do not know that off the top of my head, there is a wonderful practical arts list of classes that I do have access to, but I don't want to click off of this right now to get there. So email me at this address with the courses your child is taking, and I will let you know.
All right, here's a new one. Explain to me about dual enrollment and how does that work with pathways?
Good. Okay, very good. So dual enrollment is when a student in 11th or 12th grade, right, takes classes, signs up for classes at St. Petersburg College, or by the way, we have this arrangement with USF and with UF. Very few students take advantage of, there's a smaller menu of classes that you can take through USF or through UF, large menu of classes you can take through St. Petersburg College. But long story short, any one of those institutions, our children in 11th and 12th grade have access to those classes. All your student has to do is talk to their counselor and say, I want to take a dual enrollment course at St. Petersburg College in 11th grade. Let's look at the list together and let's decide which course I can take. And the question, which pathway? That's available in all of the pathways. If you are in the advanced scholar pathway, you're going to see that that's available along with advanced placement classes. If you're in the college scholar pathway, you're going to see that's available along with advanced placement classes. I will say one thing. Advanced scholars, we guide more towards advanced placement classes, okay? College scholar students, the middle pathway, we guide more towards the dual enrollment classes. It's an equal guiding, I think, towards the advanced placement and dual enrollment. Many elite competitive universities look a little bit more highly on advanced placement classes than dual enrollment classes, with the simple measure being the test the kids take at the end of the advanced placement classes is an international test that is internationally scored, right? And so your student is compared to students across the country and world. The dual enrollment classes, the test students take in that are literally in that one teacher's class, in that one college or university. Still good and will give you college credit. They're just seen a little bit more, the advanced classes are seen a little bit more favorably, the advanced placement classes by major colleges and universities, and certainly the competitive ones.
The last question we have for the moment is, does a class in video gaming satisfy a fine arts requirement? My son is in the engineering program.
So if that parent also, just like the other parent, sends me the class name into my email, I will look that up on the practical arts for the fine arts credit requirement. I'll look that up and I'll write to them personally. All
right, look at that. On the dot of 7:30. we've worked through all the questions. Families, you know how to get a hold of Dr. Vasquez and our district school counselor supervisor. Of course, we're directing you back to the school first, school counselor, and even to have your student address those things, first with the school counselor and then, of course, with your help and advocacy. So we hope you enjoyed the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Vasquez. We can't thank you enough for these webinars, these Parent Academy Power Hours. We actually have another one coming up on Thursday. If those of you that might have an older student, this one's planning for college, and it will talk about the college application process and financial aid and scholarships and how to go through all that. So that's coming up on Thursday, same time, 6:30 to 7:30. Everything can be found on our Parent Academy webpage. It's pcsb.org/Parent Academy. I will be sending the recording and the slides and the handouts that Dr. Vasquez mentioned tomorrow to each of you, everybody who registered, but all that is also available on the website as well. So we just thank you so much for participating, and we'll see you at the next Parent Academy. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rita. That was awesome.
You
I
are
learned
welcome. Thank you,
I
Dr.
learned so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
That was amazing that you're on the dot of 7:30.
Yay.
So much information, but yeah, nicely presented. So.
Thank you so much.
I don't think you took a breath.
Or a sip of water. I know you got your water, but you didn't sip it.
That is too funny. That's too funny. And that's why I didn't dig a little bit deeper in the diploma designations. Just so much information, but everybody now knows a little bit about them. All right,
Right.
ladies, I'm signing off.
All right,
Good night.
bye.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
all.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.